Welcome to another episode of the Run from the Norm podcast, and we've got a great one for you, friends. I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. I sat down for a chat with Alex Mimlitz, who is the owner of Fleet Feet Meridian, as well as the newer location, the Fleet Feet in Nampa. It was just an inspiring conversation. He's just such a truly genuine and authentic person, and I could not help but just be absolutely inspired by everything that he had to say, not just in the words, but also in his intention and the feeling that he had behind it. I have no doubt you're going to take away the same when you have a chance to listen to this in its entirety. So I really am going to focus on keeping this introduction short, and we're going to get right into it. It's time to run from the norm. Okay, today we have Alex Mimlitz with me, owner of Fleet Feet Meridian and also Fleet Feet Nampa now. I want to thank you for taking the time to join me. I know you had a long day today at the store here in Nampa. Black Friday, things are crazy after Thanksgiving weekend. If you could just take a minute, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, where you grew up, what it was like, when you were a kid maybe.
Sure. Appreciate that, Jake. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Really grateful to be here. Thanks for inviting me on the pod. I so appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's a long week for sure. So I'll do my best to bring the energy, but it was a great week. Thinking back, I was born just outside of Chicago in a suburb called Elmhurst, about 15 miles west of the city there. Had a wonderful childhood, great parents. My mom's a teacher, my dad's a pastor, had a couple siblings, and got into running when I was in 6th grade. So that really defined a huge part of my life, to this day.
What got you into it?
So it's kind of a silly story, but it was at my 5th grade graduation, actually. And it was kind of a big deal, going to middle school across the way. And we had a pool party to celebrate. And my crush was there.
Oh.
Her name was Rachel. And I, really got up the nerve on this big graduation. I was feeling pretty excited going to middle school to express the fact I had some feelings for her, that I like you, right? And
young love.
Yep, there you go. So walked up to her and, expressed that I had feelings for her. I liked her, loved to see her over the summer, excited to go to middle school. It was a pool party, right? So I'm shirtless. She took one look at me, right? And she started laughing and said, Alex, you can't like me. You have man boobs, right? Just total rejection. Almost like worst case scenario situation
the record
there.
Just stopped.
Yeah, real bad, right? So that was disheartening, to say the least, right?
Absolutely.
So
you said this was 5th grade?
5th grade, man. Yeah,
Gosh.
Pretty impactful moment for me. So
absolutely.
Went home, and my parents could tell I was a little upset. I kind of brushed it off, tried to hide it. My dad came up and was like, Alex, what's going on? To tell me what happened today. So I shared the story with him, and he said, okay, give me a second, come downstairs with me. And in the house I had growing up, we had this really creepy crawl space, under the house. So
Is it like the old ranch style house?
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah. So, we didn't have much of a basement, but we went down the stairs and opened up a little door, and we start crawling under the house together. And I remember it. He grabbed a box, that was kind of way back in the corner. And he kind of blew some dust off of it, right?
Like an inch of dust built up on it.
Straight up, man. It was gross down there. No. And he opens up the box and he starts taking out, some plaques and some trophies and just some ribbons and, some short stories he had written about running.
Oh, interesting.
And I had never really known that, he was a runner growing up. He ran in college in my hometown at Elmhurst College down the block. He ended up coaching there as well.
How big is Elmhurst?
Elmhurst is about 50,000 people.
Okay, so it's decent size.
Yeah, decent size. Suburbs in Chicago are a little different than here. There's like 200 of them. So they all kind of blend together.
Okay.
So Chicagoland is like a huge thing.
Massive.
But, crazy. But Elmhurst was a great place to grow up. And he starts, telling me these stories about, his running and how it gave him confidence and that's how he met my mom. And I'm sitting there like, whoa, this is really cool.
This is the superpower.
Yeah, maybe I could be a runner, right? And he had this huge impact on me. And the next day, he's like, my dad at that point hadn't ran for probably 2 decades. Right?
And you had no idea that he was a runner.
Yeah,
so did he still run at that point,
no,
even casually?
He was donezo at that point. He was helping a bit at our high school, helping out a bit at the time. But the next day, he's like, we're gonna go to the stop sign and back, right? So that's where it kind of got started. And I remember, like, I couldn't make it more than a block or two without a big side ache, right? And I remember those days.
I'm gonna die.
Exactly. Can't even catch my breath. And that's where things really got going for me. I just clung on to it.
What was it about running that was so impactful for you?
Man.
Because obviously it does, one run doesn't change it all. Well, I can't say that. One run can change it all because you have to start.
Mm-hmm. When I was growing up, I had a lot of energy, right? And I had trouble focusing. And when I started running, I felt some things change, right? I had more confidence, so I was more kind of comfortable in my own skin and in my own space. And I just felt more focused. I had something to look forward to, whether that was getting through a school day or a situation I didn't really want to be in. I was like, man, at least I can go running after this, and that really gave me something to look forward to. And things started to click, especially once I started to find out I was pretty good at it, and I think I'm good at pushing myself real hard, right? Like most runners are.
Sure.
And it just felt really good to just give my all at something.
And just sweat it out.
Yeah. And I think that's why life, at times was tricky because I didn't know how to channel my energy well. And with running, I could be like, I'm just going to channel all of it, this thing, right?
Were you into any other athletics or anything
I played
that?
baseball growing up.
Okay.
And I actually started to get a lot better at baseball once I started running.
Interesting.
Because I think I just got fitter as well, but also just more focused. I was a center fielder, so I just loved to go run after balls.
Absolutely.
And run around the bases and whatnot, but never really a talented athlete. But there was just something about the opportunity to have an outlet just to completely express myself.
Right.
Just like send it.
Were you running by yourself or were you running with other people?
So then I signed up for cross country, that following year in 6th grade and was able to have that experience, which was wonderful. Our middle school cross country program was pretty phenomenal. We had a lot of kids. As a 6th grader, actually, that was the only sport you could do at my middle school. So it was a huge team. And of course, all over the spectrum, right? You had some kids just showing up, something to do, right? Make some friends. But
my parents are making me do it.
Exactly. Give them another hour or two after school, to finish up work and whatnot. But I was able to meet some of my, best friends to this day, in middle school cross country, right? And running has that effect on people, right?
Absolutely.
Where you can connect with
builds
others.
Community.
It's amazing.
Which we'll get into.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, at the time, just started running through middle school and one thing led to another, ended up running some pretty fast times and was able to go to an amazing high school program. My coach had been there. His name's Joe Newton. And he had been there at that point for 52, 51 years.
I've heard that name before. So Tracy Harris.
Sure.
I sat down and chatted with Tracy Harris, and he said it was Joe Newton's book. I can't remember the title of it, but completely changed his perspective on coaching.
Yeah.
And in our podcast, he referred to him.
Yep.
Wow.
So, and he would ask us to call him Mr. Newton. So we didn't really call him Coach Newton. And Mr. Newton, I think, wrote 3 or 4 books. There was that Long Green Line, Running to the Top of the Mountain was another one. It'd be interesting to see what Tracy had read that impacted him so much.
And I remember him saying that he hated to be called coach.
Yeah, exactly. That was a thing, but just a phenomenal person.
And isn't it the winningest high school track team in like history or something to that effect?
I think so. It'd be interesting to see if that stat's still true today. But
wow.
55 years, I believe, and I think 28 state titles and something like 12 seconds and 7/3. It was really rare for a team not to trophy at the state meet.
And how big was the team?
We had, north of 200 kids consistently, massive. And that was a secret to some of the success. He recruited heavily. He'd go to the gym classes, for all the freshmen and share about the success and how running can change your life. And he just really believed in us, man.
Wow, I guess so.
It was a phenomenal experience. I believe he was the assistant coach in the Olympics, I think in 1988.
Yeah, I heard something about that. He's the only high school cross-country coach to ever participate.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So cool.
Yeah,
It's crazy
it was
how
a privilege.
things tie together randomly.
Dude, the running world is connected.
It really is.
It really is. One way or another, I think all runners know each other through a couple people.
Oh,
so it's
one
cool.
step away from somebody you know well.
Exactly.
Crazy. Okay, so you're running in high school and things just start to kind of fall in place, or
Totally.
are you picking some distances that are, working well for you?
Yeah, I definitely was more of a distance guy. I'm not super fast in terms of my speed, but I think I can hurt for a while, put my head down, right? But it was a phenomenal experience. We ended up winning 2 state titles, my sophomore year and my senior year. We got to go to NXN. I got to go to NXN 3 out of 4 of those years, which was a blast out at nationals. So just a phenomenal experience. And again, the relationships I had built and what I was taught from Mr. Newton and then our assistant coach, Coach Kern, just they're still impacting me today. And it's one of those things, which is kind of a funny thing. You know, the older I get, it almost seems like what they told me, it almost has more of an impact. I almost understand it better. You
understand it more now, more frame of reference.
Exactly. You know, as I get older and experience life. And I you know, it's not lost on me like what a privilege that is to have had that experience in high school. And I'm just so grateful for it because it really defined the person I am today. And for the success I've been able to be fortunate to achieve in my life, I really give a lot of that, you know, to
having
my
that positive support too.
Yeah.
So what was it, Rachel? Was that her name?
Oh, Rachel. Yeah, that's right.
She has
Rachel.
no idea the transition that she had in your life. Thanks,
that's
Rachel.
Hilarious. So honestly, that was a wonderful gift she gave me that day because it put me on a whole new trajectory that, again, defines who I am today. And I wouldn't want it any other way. So
that's
funny how that works. As much as it sucked in the moment, you know, I'm grateful for it.
Well, it had a purpose.
Yeah.
And so then you took that into, sounds like D1, you moved from high school and you ended up running in college. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I was at the point where I could, you know, receive some scholarship at a smaller D1 program, right? Or I could walk on with one of the big programs. I also looked at some Division II schools as well, and I took a lot of visits, went all over the country, but I landed in Nashville, and I could share a little bit about that. I had some, you know, like most runners, right? I think my junior year of high school, I got pretty banged up, and I was dealing with a massive hip issue, actually. You know, I've always loved music.
From running?
Yeah, from running.
Okay.
Yep, just overuse. We ran a lot.
Yeah. So, what runner doesn't know overuse?
Yeah, totally.
You said music, and I don't want to completely derail us because I've got a background in music too. And I was doing a little Google searching on you before you got here, and I saw some pictures of you look like maybe playing some piano. And then, you know, obviously the Nashville connection.
Who knows what's out there? Yikes!
Right. But yeah, you said you were going to college in Nashville, so I do want to touch on the music side. I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. So when I was still in high school and I was hurt from running, you know, like most runners, right? You get this stimulus from running, and once it goes away, you know, you feel like what is my purpose, right? It gets existential so quick.
It does.
And it's amazing when that happens. But I really started to pour my heart into music. So I was in choir and I did shows. I was in some musicals and started taking some music theory and just fell in love with singing and playing piano, writing some music.
Where did that come from? Was your family musical as well?
Yeah. Of course, my parents, love music, and honestly, at church growing up too. Music's a part of that,
Absolutely.
Of course. Just always been drawn to it. I haven't thought about that much. That's a wonderful question. It's just always something I've been drawn to. To this day, I'm a huge concert goer.
Yeah, just a creative outlet.
Yeah, my singing today is mostly karaoke, at dive bars. But
you know what?
But it's
as
something.
Long as it's fun.
Yeah, exactly. So, for me to decide Nashville, I got some great advice when I was looking at all these schools. And one of my, who ended up being my teammates on a visit at Belmont University in Nashville, I ended up going, he said, Alex, you need to pick the school you would go to if you weren't a runner. And that kind of blew my mind because I'm going to all these college visits and, going out with the team and meeting the coach, right? And it's like, I'm making this decision because of running, right? And that kind of shifted my mindset a bit. Like I could be in this music community, in Nashville, and connect with, down our hallway in our dorm, there'd be a bass player and a drummer and then the music manager for a band that were going to a house show on Saturday night, right? So instead of frat parties, it was a lot of bands playing in people's homes, which was just so fun and awesome. So I could be like in the trenches of a music community and in the industry of music, but still be able to run. And that helped me make a decision.
What was your goal at that point then? Were you did you have a goal of pursuing music?
Sure. I actually originally found Belmont for their musical theater program.
Interesting.
And going into my senior year of high school, I almost didn't go and run. I almost just went all in on music because my hip issue was so bad. I ended up showing up at practice and was able to figure it out and was able to run fast enough where then I was able to get a scholarship and meet the coach. But I originally found Belmont, to go into music,
Interesting.
And probably performance, but I think I would have really leaned into music business, especially with where I ended up as a small business owner.
Sure.
So that's kind of interesting to think about. And who knows, maybe one day I'll get into that scene here in Boise and try to help develop the music community.
Amazing music scene here too. I'm about as deep in the music scene. Well, not anymore, but like I wasn't, with the running side too. It's a great scene here full of amazing artists. I'd love to see you, get back to playing. So do you still play now at all?
Very rarely, just with friends, and it's definitely on the horizon of something I love to get back into.
Just need to figure out where to squeeze in that extra time.
Yeah, exactly. The problem all of us are faced with every day, right?
Yeah.
But I'd love to find a way to make it more integrated in my life. So
well,
one day.
keep that goal up there
Totally,
on the dream board.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're in Belmont then, and you're on the track team, and you're running there. How are things going for you?
Yeah, overall great. My running in college was pretty average, I would say.
Are you working through the hip issue at this point?
Yeah, I still had a couple injuries, of course, but honestly, I think I would blame probably isn't the right word to use, because I don't regret it, honestly. But I think most of the reason my running wasn't as successful in college was because I got real into Fleet Feet. So I started working at Fleet Feet when I was in Elmhurst still, in high school.
Okay.
So I started fitting in the shop there. And then when I went to college, there was also a Fleet Feet in Nashville. And the owner of that store, there was 2 stores at the time.
And they're all independently owned, correct?
Yep, sure, yep. And Christy Beth is her name. And she, I'll rephrase that. There are some Fleet Feets that are owned by the corporation of Fleet Feet, right? But the majority of them are franchisees and locally owned and operated. But Christy Beth owned the stores in Nashville, and she had also ran at Belmont. So we had a bit of a connection there. And she really just took me under her wing. I started working part-time while going to school, kind of on weekends and in evenings, running cross-country and track. And she had such an impact on my life where I really wanted to be like her. I wanted to own a Fleet Feet at that point. So by the end of my sophomore year, I had taken a full-time position at Fleet Feet, managing one of her stores while still taking a full course load and running cross-country and track. So that was pretty gnarly.
Busy.
Yeah, I guess, man. I don't like to sit around
changed.
much. Yeah, exactly. So I think, it was an amazing experience, running in college. I made some lifelong friends that, I'm still very close with. Today I was talking to one of them on the way over here, actually.
Nice.
Shout out to Luke. But it was a lot, right? And I think something had to give. I was able to run all 4 years, but my performance wasn't exactly where I'd like it to be. But again, the experience I got in my time at Fleet Feet, managing a store before I could even legally drink was pretty awesome. So yeah, I really, really am very grateful for Christy Beth kind of taking a chance on me and giving me some responsibility. Yeah. To
learn
run
the
a store.
business and learn how to run it.
Exactly.
So you're going to college you're managing this store now, and what year are you at this point?
So that was probably going into my junior year. I believe I was managing that store.
So at that point, is it starting to shift focus a little bit to where now you're getting more interested in the business side of things? Yeah. What's your major?
Yeah, so at that point, I was studying exercise science.
Okay.
So I wasn't able to be a music major running cross country and track. The coach wasn't happy about that, and I don't think the professors in the music school would have been either, especially musical theater. It's actually very
consuming.
Yeah, very physical as well.
Yeah. Depending
on the show, of course. But so I switched my major from exercise science to business because I had kind of gotten to a point where the classes were getting tough. And the track for exercise science is mostly pre-med or physical therapy or orthopedics. And I was at a point where I was loving my time at Fleet Feet so much that I didn't want to dedicate the time and energy needed to study to make the exercise science degree make a lot of sense.
Sure. Things are just starting to shift a little bit.
Yeah. So I shifted to business, which was awesome. I could apply my time working full time, which I think was fairly unique for an undergrad business student to have a full-time job. So I never had to think twice about what my projects were going to be on and my entrepreneurship classes. I was writing business plans and modeling accounting.
Case studies right there.
Yeah, it was really amazing.
So was Fleet Feet, was that your first job then? You said you got it in high school.
Yeah, the only other jobs I've had outside of Fleet Feet was a camp counselor at a over the summer cross-country, running camp.
Okay.
And then I took a bit of a hiatus from Fleet Feet and actually worked for my fiance's tech startup called Lumini. And
I was reading a little bit about that. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, I did some technology sales there. And then I had another little job on the in-between time of working to get some funds to purchase the Fleet Feet at Meridian. So my hiatus from the running industry was in technology sales. But
okay.
Yeah.
So then you're getting through college. College is coming to an end. And I think you said, were you moving to a general manager at some point here?
Yeah. So before I became the general manager of the two stores, I helped Christy Beth open her third store, which was about 30 minutes north of Nashville. So I was able to get an experience of opening a store from scratch, which was hugely instrumental in opening Nampa here this last February.
I bet.
Going into a new community, a new market, opening up a store, connecting with the local runners, the local community partners, and really building out a store from scratch. So that was an amazing experience as well that I'm very grateful for. After that, then I was overseeing the store managers at all 3 locations. And at this point, I'm really hankering, right? I'm ready to go own my own store.
As I say, you're starting to get that idea now.
Yeah.
I want to have my own.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
So I went through the process initially with Fleet Feet. They used to have a program, which has now been sunsetted in a sense, where they would take high performers from Fleet Feets across the country, place them in new markets or existing stores. And as the store grew, you would essentially earn sweat equity to get to a place where then you could purchase the store.
Okay, I was going to ask how that worked. If you could just come in off the street and say, I want to start a Fleet Feet, and they'll say, yeah, sure, go for it. Or if there's some sort of a vetting process, you have to be in with Fleet Feet to get to that point.
Yeah, I think the short answer is there's probably there's a fairly strong vetting process. I think industry experience is huge, of course, and you need the capital, right, to open up a new store. Last week I was at the running event in Austin, which is our industry conference, and the CEO of Fleet Feet said there was 75 current applications of people trying to become Fleet Feet. So they take it seriously. It's of course a reflection of the brand.
Sure.
But there's a couple ways to open a store, right? You have the money or you don't, right? And for me, I didn't, right? So I needed to find an opportunity to essentially earn sweat equity.
Sure.
And that was the program I first attempted to through Fleet Feet. But when I finally got to the point where I was ready, they had ceased the program. So I started connecting with other franchisees, other Fleet Feet owners, to work to connect with them and find a way to either purchase their existing stores or to essentially get investment so I could go to a new market and open up a store.
So how does that work? You just do cold outreach and just start reaching out to people and say, hey, I'm interested.
Sure.
Where are you at?
Yeah, but partly so. Of course, I had some connections just being in the industry. Sure. And Fleet Feet facilitates that as well. Okay. I've always been called to the West, like many that find their way out to Boise and through the Rocky Mountains. And so I started looking at some markets and identified a couple out this way. And long story short, I got connected with the gentleman who owned the store in Meridian here. At the time, he had also owned the stores in Spokane.
Okay.
Which is pretty rare. I think he might be the only Fleet Feet owner that owned Fleet Feets in not only different cities, but multiple states. Yeah.
Interesting. Is there a limit to how many you can own, or could you just build your empire?
Sure. I don't think there's a line in the sand that says this is the amount you can have, but it's a very hard business to scale, right? So much of our world, our running community is hyper local, right? It's boots on the ground, it's grassroots, it's community oriented.
Yeah.
And that's why there's a difference when you go to a locally owned running shop, like Shoes or Bandana or our shop and other businesses that sell running shoes, right?
Yeah. We on the emails there was a little bit of a touch on that. Can you explain a little bit of the difference of, say, big box, like a Shields now that they're here, and Dick's and all these these big superstores as compared to our local specialty stores where it's not just product for product, but explain what else goes into that, the community involvement of the local stores and what you do.
Sure. I appreciate that question a lot. When you walk into a locally owned running store, I believe in what we aspire to create, as well as what happens at Shoes and Bandana, is you're welcome into a space, surrounded by experts that want to help you achieve your goals, right? And that is such a cool energy that I think is few and far between, today in a brick and mortar retail store. And I think it is such an important aspect and such an important resource, for the running community, or even those that benefit from a nice running shoe, even if they're not running.
Yeah.
So I think it's just so important that these stores exist. Obviously, I'm biased because I own one.
I'm going to back that up because as you're saying that, the thing I'm starting to think about, and this isn't a knock to anybody that's working in a big box store,
Sure.
Whatever, everybody's trying to, make their living or whatever, but you go into these and I don't want to say it's not the most knowledgeable people, but I would say you go into a specialty store and it's taking it to the next level of that attention and knowing the right questions to ask and knowing how to properly get fit and knowing how to ask the right questions to get the answers out to really make sure you're addressing somebody's true needs and desires and not just, here's a sale, let's get you out the door so I can get to the next one.
Yeah, exactly. The expert knowledge, whether it's a barefoot assessment or understanding biomechanics, really knowing the product, like all of that is wonderful and it's very important. In addition to that, what I believe is the key differentiator when you walk in to a locally owned running store, you're talking with people that truly care, right? And again, nothing against an employee at a big box store because I'm sure, some of those employees do care and are happy to be there. But the employees at a locally owned running store are truly choosing to be there to help people that are coming in the door and are trained and are just naturally skilled, both to connect with those people, understand their goals, listen to their story, right? And get them where they're trying to go.
Build the relationship.
Yeah, and that passion and that energy, I think, is very rare. And I think it's specialty, right?
Absolutely.
And I really think it's important to support those stores, not to mention the resource they are, but just what Shoes and Bandana, what I like to believe we do for the community as well. When you buy a shoe at one of these stores, that money is being reinvested into what you love to do. That's what's supporting, the upcoming race. That's what's supporting the Greenbelt meetup or the Foothills walk or hike or run. It's investing into the community so you can continue to pursue your dreams, accomplish your goals, and it grows the community.
That's what I was going to say. Is from growing up over in Boise and now moving out here, one of the things I'm really passionate about is trying to grow the scene out here. And that's why it was so awesome to see the second store pop up out here in Nampa, because we've been kind of lacking with that. And I think you touched on it too, is the other side of the specialty shops is you support the races. You're building a community. If one doesn't exist, you're trying to tie everyone together and give everyone that kind of home location, which, before we started recording, you had asked what my purpose of this podcast was. And that's a big part of it. It's such an amazing community. And I want to do anything I can to help build, support, and grow that. But then it was also an opportunity to engage and have real conversation. And like we're discussing, coming into the store to build relationships and having these opportunities to really connect with people and not just, a transactional way like you might just run into a big box and, just say, hey, give me my shoes.
Yeah.
But I want to segue. You mentioned races and stuff. So once you're coming in, and I'm jumping way ahead, we're going to have to probably skip back again.
Worries.
But you got the store in Boise that you purchased, and then you open this one in Nampa. Not only running the business, how do you now move into supporting the community and the races and getting involved with that? Because I see you're sponsoring Wilson Creek.
Yeah, sure.
Love Wilson Creek.
Yeah, very excited about that.
Yeah, how does that work? How do you segue into now sponsoring the event?
Sure. So the community involvement is a huge part of our mission, right? The obvious business reasons are it's great branding, right? Getting our name out there, so people know about Fleet Feet.
You're trying to run a business and you want to keep food on the table.
Yeah, so those are great things. And those are some of the reasons why. And we get some marketing benefit from that, of course. But our business model, and one of the best things I love about Fleet Feet and the running specialty industry is that we get to do this thing where we can have a business while still help people and build the community. And these races are just such an important vehicle, for people to train for, to stay motivated, to keep moving, to keep running. And, you touched on it as yourself, sharing some of the reasons for the podcast. There's something so special, and honestly, one of my favorite things in life is being alongside others that have a shared goal, right? And what's so cool about a race, or one of my favorite things about it, is you line up with hundreds of strangers, right?
From all walks of life.
Crazy, all kinds of backgrounds, all different running experiences. Maybe it's someone's 30th 50K, maybe it's someone's first, right? Maybe it's someone's very first race ever, their very first 5K.
You were saying the turkey trot you've been working on.
Sure. And that energy is like so contagious. So it's almost kind of selfish being involved in these events and being there because it reminds us of why we do what we do. When a race starts, you have, the people that are going for the win, right? And you have the people that are just trying to finish and everywhere in between. But what's really special is regardless of your pace, regardless of your place at the end of the day, like everyone can associate with the similar feelings, with a quarter mile to go, the people winning the race, the people trying to finish, they're like, okay, the final kick, let's bring this home and let's do something we're proud of. And everyone's just trying to prove themselves wrong, right? Can I accomplish what this goal is? And I think that connectivity that we're able to establish in a race and being a part of a race is so special and so unique. And I just love being a part of that, man. So yes, it's good for the store. I think it's a right thing to do. It's a good thing to do to help people have that opportunity. But personally, man, I just love being around that energy.
Yeah, you can tell you're passionate about
it. It gives me life, and it's so cool how that's connected into the store. It's very special to have a stranger walking off the street and share they're excited and they're excited but nervous to try to do their first 5K, and then see them 2 years later finishing their first marathon, right? And remembering that first moment when they just walked in off the street and you were able to get them in a pair of shoes that empowered them to accomplish that goal is just so special, and it's a privilege to be a part of it. So.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things I love about the running in general is even though it can be a solitary pursuit at times, it's such a welcoming community, and it's such a supportive community.
Sure.
Regardless of, like you said, how fast you're going, how far you're going.
Sure.
Everybody just wants to see people be successful and accomplish that goal. And for me, the unintended side effect was the impact that it had on the rest of my life and all the different things, that it impacts when you
surprises you, right?
Completely.
Yeah.
I mean, when you start, taking care of yourself, or you're getting out and you're having these, moving meditations, this time to think.
Yeah.
So I want to backtrack a little bit because we jumped way ahead. You're finishing up college. You're starting to look around at places that you want to go. There's some conversations happening now here, Boise.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just decide, hey, you know what? I'm just going to pack up the car, the truck, whatever, and take a leap of faith. Did you come out and take a look at the area first, or just that was the opportunity and that's where you were going?
Yeah, wow. So I definitely explored. I went on probably 2 or 3 road trips, which are some of my fondest memories. I love the open road and exploring new areas where I came out and checked out some areas out west that I thought had potential. When I finally made the decision to essentially go work for the gentleman who owned the Meridian store. He had actually lived in Spokane at the time. He still does. So I actually moved to Spokane first. And I lived there for about 3 or 4 months, went under his wing and taught me a whole bunch. To this day is still one of my biggest mentors in terms of what he's taught me and what he continues to teach me. And we made the decision that I was going to come down to Meridian. I'd only been to Meridian or to Boise, that's where I moved, one time before I moved from Spokane down here. And that was actually at the Nike Cross Regionals meet. I was down here helping with that. And moved to Boise and was set up in the store. And we had made an arrangement that, as I alluded to earlier, that I was going to help grow the store and earn some sweat equity and eventually be able to purchase it from him. So he essentially modeled what Fleet Feet used to do for me as a way to help him get a return on his investment, right? To grow a business that he had purchased and hopefully have it be more valuable at the end and still accomplish the goal of.
So he knew that you were coming in with the intent of hoping to buy that store.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, that's super cool.
Yeah, so that was the plan. And when I'd first moved down here, I moved into a little apartment behind Fireside off of State Street and just got to work and really grinded it out. And we were able to see a lot of growth and a lot of success with the store, which was wonderful.
Did you come out here by yourself?
I did. Yeah, I'd moved completely solo at the time.
And how old were you?
At that point, let's think about this. It was 6 years ago. So I was 23, 24 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's just a total leap of faith.
Yeah, totally. I didn't know I knew one person who lived in Boise at the time. He was actually our Saucony sales rep who I had met in Spokane 2 months before. And that's the only person I had known. And his name's Noah. And he really took me under his wing a lot and was my first friend here and still super close with him today. So very grateful for that. Introduced me to his friend group and I was able to start to build a community. But in all honesty, it was the store that I was focusing the vast majority of my time and energy on for that whole first year and a half I lived here.
How hard is that to come into a new community that you really don't know? And I will say that I love the Treasure Valley and I love the area. But anybody that has been here for a length of time knows it can be finicky. People, they can be very, very strong-willed and opinionated over, let's say, the store they support. I think it's not so much now so divisive as it used to be. You were either, you were in one solid camp. You were your shoes or bandana or Pulse when it was here. I always wondered, what would that be like coming into a community that you don't really have much experience in, and you're coming in with, for all intents and purposes, what people see as a, I'm putting this in quotes, a big box store brand, Fleet Feet. What was that like for you, and how were you accepted?
Sure. I think it was an uphill battle, and I think at times it still is. The former owner, before I was in the shop managing it, he lived in Spokane, right? So he wasn't local into our community.
Yeah.
And I think that was a huge opportunity, not only, for the store, but just in general, to help develop the running community in our Treasure Valley. And I really embraced that.
What did you do differently?
I think I just started showing up, man. I think there was just a complete lack. Yeah. I think really taking my time to be intentional, to identify what are the opportunities, what's not already happening, and really leaning into that, and then just working really hard.
What do you think your first big focus point, to where you came in and you're starting to, at this point, I assume you're still just managing it.
Sure.
And you're starting to, work towards that sweat equity, is you're starting to get more, I don't know if control is the right word, over what's happening here. Were there any big changes that you made that you really saw, not necessarily monetary, but you saw gains, the biggest gains from?
Yeah. I don't think it'll be a surprising answer. I really focused on the in-store experience, with the owner not living locally and the Meridian store really feeling, it was actually, a gentleman named Brandon Franks originally opened that store about 2 years before Wade had purchased it from him. And the team, and I think the running community that was centralized to Fleet Feet was feeling a lack of love and intentionality with the owner and who was operating that store. So showing up consistently, really being there all the time. When I say all the time, I really mean all the time. At the village,
caught in the back.
we used to be open till 9 p.m. So I was at that shop every day, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., and really working to be involved in almost every interaction of what was happening in that store. And I think setting the tone, creating culture, some of the things I touched on earlier, helping people feel truly listened to, and that the people in the shop genuinely cared to help them accomplish their dreams and goals, was the number one opportunity. And helping the team, the staff, feel that they were being cared for.
Great point.
Yeah, and once I ended up switching to a business degree in college, most of my focuses were on developing culture, creating high-performing teams, listening to your employees, really taking an approach of servant management, instead of being frustrated that people aren't performing, really understanding from their perspective why they feel they're not performing, and marrying that with the goal of the owner of the business or the operator of the business, and finding that Venn diagram moment where we can all win together. And it's very reflective of what we try to how we try to engage with our customers when they come into the store. So it really starts with the team. Every outfitter in our store is a representation and an extension of myself, and of Megan, who I own the store with now. And, developing that culture so they feel cared for, they feel listened to, I think was probably the number one biggest thing that we focused on. Our employees are really our customers. We need to earn their respect and their faith and their trust. And that starts with believing in them so that they believe in us.
Yes.
And that's what we owe them as their employers and as their business owners. And I think that's where it all begins. We could do all the marketing in the world. We could buy ads on the radio. We can put up billboards. We can sponsor every single race in the Treasure Valley. None of that really matters if the people that are coming into our store aren't having a phenomenal experience.
Absolutely.
So starting with that, because the number one reason people come to our stores, regardless of ads or how many races we sponsor, is their word of mouth referrals. When people they trust, who care about them, say, hey, you need to go check out this store. Yeah. Because they're going to listen to you, they're going to care for you, and they're going to give you an experience you deserve.
And I love hearing that. And for what it's worth, I did, from my 2 steps back, the last couple of years especially, I definitely started seeing a change and a shift in the way Fleet Feet was talked about here. And that must have been, corresponding with your ownership.
That really means a lot for you to say.
It was huge, because I remember when Fleet Feet first came in, I have history with, the stores around here too.
Sure.
The owners are friends of mine and I'm close with. And so I'll be the first one to say, I was like, what the hell is this? We don't need this here. And, stay at the village and, keep out of downtown or all this stuff. And I don't know, the narrative started to shift, and I didn't know the ownership changes. I didn't know all that. I just know that people were starting to talk more favorably. And now, it makes a little bit more sense.
And I really appreciate you saying
ownership.
That. Thank you.
Well, the thing I appreciate that you said is servant leadership. I'm a self-help guy. I love reading, books about, trying to better ourselves, and not just ourselves, but being in service of others. So I'm kind of curious, do you read a lot? Is that just something that you've kind of picked up along the way naturally?
Yeah, I wish I read more. I do love to read, and I've read some very impactful books. Ones that comes to mind is Good to Great. Almost
great one, Jim Collins.
Exactly. Yeah. Leading almost with a humbleness and finding confidence in that space, I think has been very impactful to me. But I'll even circle back to something Mr. Newton would say all the time. Right? It's nice to be great, but it's great to be nice. Right? And it's important. It's simple, right? But it feels good to win. And that's always going to be within me, and a huge driver for me. But at the end of the day, I just want to be really nice, and I want to do the right thing, and I really believe when you lead with that, some pretty special, cool things start to happen, especially in business.
And I believe that from you. I mean, we met 5 minutes before we hit record, and I can sense that with you. You truly, seem very passionate and authentic. And authenticity is a huge thing with me. And you can tell that these words, you're not just saying, that you truly do mean it and you feel it.
Yeah,
and that's very refreshing to hear and feel and see. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. No, I appreciate you saying that. I feel grateful to have the opportunity to help others. And I'm not just saying that. It really is a privilege to serve. And when I talk about feeling grateful to be around the energy that the running community brings, it's totally genuine, and I feel grateful for it. So
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, you're welcome. When did it transition into opening a second store? We've obviously had a need out here in the 2C for a long time.
Totally.
But curious what that shift looks like from going 1 to 2 stores, and how much harder is that to run 2 stores?
Yeah, I think I would get a lot of feedback being the closest store, to half of our valley, essentially, right? And hearing our customers share, they love coming to the store, they're happy to be here, but it's a challenge, to make that journey.
People coming from Ontario.
Exactly, right? So that's probably when the seed was planted. And as our valley has grown, right, and a lot of people have moved all over, but definitely, further west, I think just from a demographics, population density standpoint, it seemed like a good opportunity from a business standpoint. But as I started to develop relationships with people in our Treasure Valley community that live west, right, I started to get this feeling that they deserve, a running headquarters as well, right? And to my knowledge, there's never been a running store in Canyon County.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of.
I think Canyon County, has its challenges, even just from a fitness, active health standpoint, and some of that's accessibility for sure.
Yeah.
But I also think when I think back on my life, when I think about the places I've been able to live that have a active environment and have an energy about them where it's an expectation, to be healthy and it's something you want to be a part of. I realized that in Canyon County that was just lacking a little bit. There wasn't someone at the forefront, pushing the community to move and to go outside and to build community together through movement and through walking and through running. And I thought that was a really cool opportunity, back to what gets me fired up and gets me going. I thought it would be a privilege to be a part of that, to develop a community for people, to be active, to be healthier. And I think the need is there, especially with the growth.
Yeah.
When you think about the races out west, right, that aren't on the Greenbelt, that aren't on the foothills, they're few and far between, right? And that is where a lot of this, going back to your questions about the races, those are the things that we put on the calendar that gets us out of bed in the morning and hitting the pavement, right? Because we sign up for it. I always tell people to tell everyone that you're signed up for this race, because they're going to ask you, hey, how's it going?
Set the goal,
exactly.
Be very, very intentional, and I like to say public with it too, because you're holding yourself accountable at that point. It's harder to back out of it if you've spoken out that this is what my goal is, this is what I'm going to do. Now you're committed.
Yep, exactly. That's very, very well said. And I realized that driver was just lacking, out west. And, the other way that I like to believe we motivate people is when they come into our store, one of their biggest barriers to being active is their foot pain, or their knees bothering them, or their lower back is flaring up. And it's a huge barrier on their weight loss journey or on their ability to finish a 5K or to achieve this far goal of running a marathon. And I just realized that those resources, those drivers that are present in Meridian and Boise, they're just not here, as much. And there are some wonderful things happening in Nampa and Caldwell. There's some great organizations that are working to create a change as well. But I just felt like, with whether that's more races or more opportunities for people to run, we just started our more consistent Nampa Run Club this last weekend, as well as the store. Now there's an opportunity, maybe there's a driver, to get people moving. And, of course, bit of a risk, but so far it's been going well. And I'm really excited, to have a store on this side of the valley because I think it's going to help, create a change.
It's much
needed. I'm excited
needed
about that.
Yeah,
well,
and like I said, I'm glad it's out here too, because the farther you get into it, the more you kind of get a better idea of what you like and what you need, and it's much easier for people to at that point go and start ordering online or bypassing that experience of going in store. What I've loved since it's been here is even if I just need a few gels or I want some supplements of some sort, it's nice that it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes away, depending on marketplace traffic, to get there, which actually leads to a question. How do you choose a location? You're looking at the entirety of Nampa, Caldwell. How do you choose a spot?
Sure. So the economics have to work out, right? We put some numbers down of what we think we can do, and we work backwards a little bit of what those ratios should be in terms of our rent expense. So that's a qualifier initially, and that really helps narrow down what those spaces can look like. Size is also important. It can't be too small, and it can't be too big, right? Backroom space was a big learning lesson. Not many retail stores have a big enough backroom space to carry all the shoes. From a retail standpoint, the product that we sell takes up a good bit of room. Right. So we actually ended up having to knock down a wall at the Nampa store and move it about 10 feet closer on the sales floor.
Just for storage
just
space.
To have space to store those shoes. So that's an important factor. Of course, the location of foot traffic and visibility and parking, all those things matter. I will say one of the things that is a little different with our industry and with a running specialty store, which can be helpful in some ways, is that we are truly a destination, right? And of course, being at the Village and having foot traffic absolutely helps. But when you think about our differentiator, what makes us special, it makes us unique, and that's a service we provide. The fact that we have people that care, that know what they're talking about, and can really guide people along to help them accomplish their goals. And that word of mouth referral, again, drives the traffic. So I think the space we selected has good visibility, it has good parking. But at the end of the day, it took a little bit of pressure off. And that also, of course, helps with rent expense, that we don't necessarily need to be in the shiniest place in town that has the best co-tenancy, because I know a lot of people are going to find us if they want to.
Yeah.
And we want people in our store that want to be there, right? So kind of finding that right balance, is definitely a challenge.
It's an awesome spot, though, because you have burritos right next to you.
Exactly.
You have sandwiches right next to that, and smoothies, I think, maybe.
Yeah, that's right.
Man, that's a trifecta right there. You're in the perfect spot.
I got all the opportunities to replenish the calories you're burning.
Oh,
right?
absolutely. I love it.
But yeah, it's gone well. Just the fact you can park in front of the store is huge, compared to the Village, where you have to potentially spend 20 minutes looking for a parking spot and then walking a quarter mile. So
I didn't think about that. That's a great point.
So depending on how busy it is, of course, but there's trade-offs with everything, and at the end of the day, I want to bet on myself and I want to bet on our team. And as long as the location is good enough, I'm confident we can take it from there. So
that's cool. You're just radiating happiness to me. I could just tell you were such a good dude. It's it's getting me excited about it too, hearing you talk about it. And it seems like Fleet Feet is super cool in how they support the owners.
Sure.
Because I hear about different Fleet Feets in different locations, and people have a pretty rabid following behind them, which would tend, I would think, to speak to the strength of the ownership, of them helping vet and select the right people to allow into this family, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. It's a very supportive system. I have people I can talk to. When you own a running store, you're faced with some very unique challenges. I would imagine a lot of business owners would feel that way. So it's hard for me to say. The only business I've owned is a running store, but it's a very niche industry where there are nuances, right? There's some unique competition. And
the shopping experience in general is just changing.
Sure. Yeah, that's well said. And having people that I can pick up a phone phone and talk to and have them understand, what I'm going through is just huge, So I really am very, very grateful for that. And of course, there are other benefits as well, but it's a good place for me to be. And it's where, of course, my experience is at. So.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're in the right spot. Now, I got a few things, at least 2 or 3 things I want to touch on here before we get too far away here. So we've been touching on all the store and all that. I wanted to touch on Winter Warriors.
Yeah, sure.
What's Winter Warriors?
Winter Warriors is our winter walking and running program, completely free. And it starts on Black Friday. So it just started this last Friday.
Okay.
And it goes all the way until Valentine's Day. And kind of the genesis of Winter Warriors is creating a program that incentivizes people to keep moving throughout the dark and the cold winters that we experience here in the Treasure Valley. One thing I've noticed, and of course, runners, as we've shared, are all across the spectrum, that compared to other cities, where I grew up in Chicago or even in Nashville, there are definitely people that focus on running, throughout the spring and the summer and into the fall. And then as winter hits, there's a lot of reasons,
the
to stop.
Doldrums,
exactly.
Yes. It's
Whether
hard to stay
that's
motivated.
The environment or, even skiing and snowboarding, right? That's a much bigger thing out here than other communities across the country. So we really wanted to create an opportunity to help people, to continue to move, even just very practically said, for a spring race, in April or May, you can't afford to not be moving throughout December, January, February, March. As you take that time off, as your injury risk goes up and you have to be very patient to get back into things. Yeah, that happens too, Yeah. So we basically created a program that's gamified. In a world where there's fake internet points that seem to matter, where you get that kind of affirmation of, okay, I'm doing this and I'm getting something for it. So basically, when you show up, you earn a point just for being there. Whether you're walking or running, if you're doing a mile or 10 miles, you get a point. And then when it's under, I believe, 31 or 32 degrees, I should know this, you get an extra point. So you're actually incentivized to show up the colder it gets.
Okay.
And then when it's snowing or raining or sleeting or hailing, any sort of precipitation, you get an additional point.
Interesting.
So there's 11 meetups every single week, some in the evening, some in the morning. We have some in Nampa, Meridian, and in Boise as well. And we tried to create a lot of opportunities and could definitely not do it without our leaders for each of the meetups, because we need people to show up consistently, create a safe, inclusive environment that's very encouraging for those that might be intimidated to show up.
Sure.
And then also literally track people and check them in. And people get really into it. The final Winter Warriors party where we announce the standings is a pretty exciting time. It can be pretty tense. You're like announcing, the Super Bowl winner. Honestly, people get really into it. And it's so fun to see people embrace the program and meet friends along the way and not have to be by themselves.
Yeah.
Not only from a safety reason, but just to be around that energy that we've touched on in our conversation. And it's so cool to encourage someone to show up who was intimidated to come into the store because they don't see themselves as a runner, right? But then to show up at one of our group meetups and be brought in to that vibe and to that family and be encouraged and meet some close friends, but then we'll see them sign up for our next training program, right? Or we'll see them sign up for a race. And it's just it's so cool to see that happen.
That's such an awesome idea. So if somebody's interested in the club, I guess, I don't know if it's referred to as a club.
Yeah, more of a program.
Okay, program.
Yeah, sure.
How do they learn more? Where do they go?
Thanks for the question. So you can definitely check out our website. We posted about it a bunch on Instagram. And you can also stop by one of our shops. Super easy to sign up. You just put your name and email in there, and then you're getting on the weekly emails that we send if we have to change locations or times with each of the set meetups. And you just get kept in the loop on all the local happenings or the themed runs. We'll have some costume runs or
That's awesome.
Other ways to keep it fun and exciting. So definitely sign on up. It's a blast, and it'll keep you moving throughout the winter.
That's cool. I love the idea of that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and then let's jump over to the Boise Front Trail Runs. So, friend of the pod, friend of both of ours, Dan Button.
Yeah.
Chatted a lot about.
Love Dan.
Yeah, such a good dude. The Boise Front Trail Run and also the Tree City Track Club.
Sure.
Talk a little bit about your involvement with those?
Yeah, I'd love to. So the Boise Front Trail Run is one of the races that we put on. It's really near and dear to my heart, as well as Megan and Dan and his partner Sumner, and then our other really close friends, Shihan and Ashley. And this race has been going on, I hope I don't butcher this, at least 10 years, maybe 15. We tried to figure it out one time, not sure where we landed, but it was originally started by the YMCA. Mm-hmm. I think Tim Savera was really involved in getting that going. It's up at Bogus Basin. And I don't remember if it was around COVID exactly. I was helping out at the Bora cross country team. I love to coach and help people
My alma
improve
mater.
their running. There we go. That's right. And I developed a relationship with Coach Savera, and he had shared that there are a couple races the YMCA were not going to continue to put on, right? And Boise Front Trail Run was one of them. And looking back on it, I think, now that I know the endeavor it is to put on a race up at Bogus, especially a trail race, I understand why Coach Savera was so passionate about keeping it going, right? Because he had built that race and he had shared that if we were interested in continuing the legacy of the race, that he would let us take it over. And it was awesome, that he gave us that opportunity. And that was, this last year was our third year, and we got up to 500 participants.
Wow.
So I think it might be, if not the biggest, one of the biggest trail races in Idaho.
I was going to say would have to be.
Yeah, so there's a 5 and a 10 miler. Both provide their unique challenges, and they both provide really cool opportunities, right? Going back to what we were talking about earlier, you have
it makes it accessible.
Yeah, exactly. That's very well said. This can be your first trail race, right? And because it can be intimidating to do anything that's new, especially up on top of a mountain, right?
The cool thing though is if you're around here, Bogus, you know the area, and you've been up there, so it's not something strange where you're gonna have to worry about getting eaten by a wolf.
Yeah, it's well said.
And 5 or it's a 5 or a 10K.
Yep. Yeah. So a 5 mile.
5 mile. Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a realistic distance for somebody who's trying to build into it, to go somewhere that they know and do something that they can achieve the goal.
Yeah, exactly. Getting people up to Bogus, like outside of the winter, is a really cool thing too. Because some people don't even realize like how beautiful it is to get up there. So the 5 mile provides that opportunity, which is awesome. Especially there's not too much vert on it, and it has a downhill start. It's really fun. And then the 10 mile is like your challenge, right? Where in about 3 or 4 miles, you have as much, if not a little more than Roby, on the steep grade. So you get all the way up to Schaefer Butte, and you get, I guess, I think the tallest summit, at least in the Boise Front, that's close to Boise. So that's a really cool opportunity too. So you kind of are speaking to this person that's seeking the thrill of accomplishing something really hard. Yeah. And it brings, again, people together that have all different kinds of goals but are all still feeling similar ways, and it's really rad. And the mission for that race is to help support our local trails. So we donate all the proceeds to Ridge to Rivers, which takes care of our beautiful foothills, and there's a really wonderful synergy around that where people can engage in a trail race while still giving back to the local community.
That is so awesome.
And Bogus
I was reading about your involvement in giving back to the Ridge to Rivers and the trail community, and that is fantastic.
Well, thanks. Yeah, we're happy to do it. It's really important. We're very privileged here in Boise to have access to so much single track.
Absolutely.
We wanted to play a part in continuing to keep that going, and just the awareness, right? So people understand that there is an organization that's managing this beautiful space, and there's expectations in terms of how we should all act out there.
We all have to do our part.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
so
be good stewards of the trails.
Exactly. We all have to work together. It takes a village, and when we talk to Ridge to Rivers about, what else can we do, to help facilitate, this trail system, that's almost always their response. Education, awareness, tell people about the website, get them following the Facebook page. So we're taking care of our trails, and we're treating each other with respect when we're out there. And I think if we can play a small part in creating that community, like that's a pretty good thing. So
that's awesome. It's cool to see the increasing involvement that you're having just in the scene in general. I mean, it's really inspiring, and it really gives people an opportunity to get exposed to what trail running is like. And once it expands from there, the sky's the limit. And once you start figuring out the places that your leg can take you, and you get into the longer, crazier ultra distances and stuff, it'll blow you away what you're capable of if you just get out and give yourself the opportunity to explore yourself.
Yeah, that's very, very well said. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about running. I'll hint at this as well. We're planning on adding, and I'll give a shout out to the team up at Bogus Basin. They've been phenomenal with working with us, and they've been a great organization to work with to put this race on. And they're allowing us to add a Friday event as well. So an evolution of evolution of the Boise Front Trail Run to the Boise Front Trail Festival, working to kind of follow in the footsteps of, the Mammoth Trail Festival or Broken Arrow and some of these really phenomenal...
Get music up there.
Yeah, so we're going to add, it's not quite a VK because we don't have that capability up at Bogus, but we're going to do a really cool hill climb.
Nice.
1 to 2 miles just straight up.
We need that here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be super rad.
Oh, that's going to be crazy.
We're really excited and try to make it a Grand Prix approach. We're also going to do helping to facilitate Bogus with the Summer Trail Series. So over the summer, I think on Wednesday or Thursday evenings, there'll be some races throughout June and July. And the plan is to make a race series out of it. So you get points as you come and have a kind of a Grand Prix style with the prologue on Friday and then the 5 and 10 on Saturday.
Cool.
So we're really excited about that.
And then at some point, you're going to have to be up there and you can play some music too.
Yeah, bring it all together. I don't know.
Yeah.
Race directing and also performing. That might be my
living.
Together. Yeah, exactly. But we'll see. You never know. So
funny. Yeah, that's awesome.
Should be fun.
So then Tree City Track Club, that kind of ties in as well. What's your involvement with the Tree City Track Club?
Of course. So I've known a lot of the people involved in Tree City Track Club as it is now since I first started moving here. You asked a question earlier when I first moved here, right? And I knew no one, Finding people that I could connect with and start to build a community around was a huge goal of mine and was very important to me. And of course, I found that through running, right? Not only meeting people in the shop that would come in and then meeting up with them, the following week for a run, but starting to show up to some of the local run clubs. And at the time, we really labeled that as the Boise Billies. And I was in this place in my running career where I was starting to get into ultras and kind of getting a bit more of a performance mindset going. And I was able to connect with some people in the community that are now super involved in Tree City Track Club. So not sure if this is the best way to say this. And Boise Billies has been a phenomenal group and has provided a lot of great opportunities in terms of getting a lot of people together just to run real hard and to get better. But I see Tree City Track Club as a bit of an evolution.
Next evolution.
Yeah. Of the Boise Billies. So a lot of the same characters, but a bit more organized. And I'm really proud of the inclusiveness of it as well. So we're really excited to support it.
It expands the idea even bigger with the ideas that Dan, from what I understood from Dan.
Exactly. Yeah, creating more opportunities, more structure, better communication, I believe, and I'm just really excited to see that group come to life, and super excited to support it is through Fleet Feet as well. So it's a great group. There are a couple meetups throughout the week. I think the exact times and days are a bit in flux on Tuesday and Wednesday as we transition from getting out there really early in the morning.
Yeah.
But that Sunday meetup is real consistent at Payette Brewery at 7:30 p.m. And I would kind of showcase Tree City Track Club as it's definitely inclusive and everyone is welcome. And there is a focus on a goal, right? It's a little more performance oriented is how I like to pitch it to people.
Yeah.
So if you're ready to kind of up your running game and get a race on the calendar and shoot for a PR that you're really going to push yourself in, I think it's a phenomenal group to show up to because you'll definitely have people that push you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and from what I understood from Dan too, there's coaching involved to where they really want to have people not just show up, but people can show up and push themselves and go for whatever. But like you're saying, if you want to level it up, there's people there that have that knowledge and that background and experience that want to help support that.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is also probably a little good segue for the coaching side of things.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so you've coached runners from shorter distances all the way up to ultra distances?
Yeah, I have. I started coaching in college actually with some runners I had met that lived in my dorm, and of course I always looked up to my dad who was a coach, as well as the coaches I've had in my life, and also just as a runner, right? You get a little nerdy about how to optimize performance, and you're excited to share that with others. And I've coached in the Fleet Feet capacity for some of our training programs over the years, but I've had times in my life where I've had up to 20 or 25 athletes and really helping them reach their goals as well. I put that a bit on hold over the last couple months with opening the second store, which has been a challenge in a way because I do miss it. I'm very, very grateful to still have a couple of people that allow me to give them some guidance on how to get them where they want to go. I coach Megan right now, Megan Lacey, my fiance, who owns the stores with me, and that's such a privilege, and it's an absolute blast to try to help her in any way I can. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, I love coaching for all the same reasons. I love owning a running store as well. It's just such a privilege to be a part of people's journey with that.
That's so cool. Yeah. Well, speaking of journeys, what about yours? What about your running journey? I saw looking at your ultra sign up, you've done JFK 50,
oh, sure.
You've done,
boy.
Yeah, I mean, but you've done some ultra distances too. I mean, is that something that you're exploring, more?
Yeah, I got into ultras as I think some former competitive runners do, a distance that I can go run hard at, try to optimize without the comparison, right, of my former years of running fast in the 5K or the 10K or running in cross country. So that's what really drew it to me initially. Well, I say that, but the first ultra I did was actually an informal ultra I'd put together when I was moving away from Nashville. I had this silly idea where I could run all around Nashville to all the places I love to run when I lived there. It was kind of a send-off, right? So I invited all my friends and all the people that had been an important part of my life when I lived in Nashville to come run this 50 miles with me. And we called it 50 miles at midnight. So we started at 4 p.m. and the idea was to finish at 12 midnight and then have a big party, right?
Nice.
So looking back on it, I was extremely naive that after my first ultra that I could throw a party because I was absolutely dead after it. I could not move. But I did finish it, which was amazing. And then it really got me thinking, like, I think I could be better at this. So I had a good stretch there for a couple of years where I put together some performances I'm proud of and really focusing on that 50K to 50 mile distance. The vast majority of my ultras have been unofficial and really just kind of doing it on my own with some friends.
I'm the same way. I do a lot of those too. I'm trying to think of the term. Is it I want to say a motegi. That's not what it is. Motegi. I'm butchering what it was, but there's a Japanese word for it. Masogi. Masogi.
Cool.
Every year you do one big challenge.
Okay.
And I do something similar where I don't race it competitively like I used to.
Sure.
God, I keep trying to, and I hurt myself when I do. But I think it's good to have those little personal, challenges that you do.
Sure.
To just, it doesn't have to be timed. It doesn't have to be a race. It just, you go out and just go and do it.
Totally. I love that word. One thing that's really special that I've been able to experience in those moments where you're creating this situation that you're then putting yourself into, that's really hard. There's going to be a moment, right? Whether it's an unofficial race or an official race or an unofficial challenge, where you're going to ask yourself, like, what the hell am I doing here? Like,
totally.
Why am I doing this?
Yep.
And there's something, for me at least, I'll speak to my personal experience here. It can be very empowering when the answer to that question is like, oh yeah, like I put myself in this situation. I did this
because
to myself.
I can,
yeah. And that moment is always so empowering. It's not because you got pressured into signing up for a race, or it's not because you're trying to run a certain time, or you're trying to beat other people. It's like you're just trying to do this thing that you put yourself into.
Yeah.
And that's a really special feeling. And I think if you can overcome that moment, again, it kind of goes back to that point I mentioned earlier of proving yourself wrong. There's something very fulfilling about that.
Absolutely.
And
that's a great point.
Even better when you're surrounded by people who care about you and want to encourage you, because no one can do hard things
the win
completely
together.
Alone. Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly. So that's always been probably my big reason of doing those unofficial challenges. My second or third last 50 miler I did on the Greenbelt, similar situation, ran the whole Greenbelt, and I was able to get some people out there to run certain legs with me. And there's just something really, really special about that. So yeah.
Building community.
Yeah, I'd love to get back to a place where I can do it again. It's ironic, and I tell people this, that I've ran the least amount, since I started running after I actually owned a running store, which is silly,
I have no doubt.
And it's something that is a little silly to think about, but throughout my career, I was always dumbfounded. Like, how are these running store owners not running all the time? They love running. That's why they own the store. Like, what's going on here? But now I get it. It's hard.
I would assume that it's different from other businesses to where it's not just going to the business and doing the job, but it's like you've clearly stated throughout this entire conversation. There's so much more to it with the community involvement and going and supporting the races and creating and supporting these clubs and being there to truly be in service of other people. So you're kind of feeding it in a different way. But yeah, I could see where it would make it a little bit difficult to still do it in the way that you did. One of the things I've done this year is, instead of feeling like I have to go run crazy distances all the time, it's like, okay, well, what do I need today?
Sure.
Which there was something actually you had on your Instagram. I'd like to ask you what this means to you. This moment.
That's
all it says on your
Sure.
your bio. This moment.
Sure. I'm really passionate about trying to stay present. And throughout my life, I've found that I can be the best version of myself when I'm focusing on exactly what is happening in time, right? And it's kind of an age-old adage in a sense, but when you're truly dialed and you're focused on what's happening in front of you and you're feeding your energy into that moment, you're not stressing about what's happened in the past or what's to come. I truly believe a person can be their most genuine self. And by definition, that's the best version of yourself because you're the only person that's you that's ever existed, right? And like, to me, that takes a lot of pressure off of who I'm trying to become or who I should be or who I want to be. And those can be very important things, right? They can drive you to become better. But just being yourself in that moment and staying present is so important. Whether you're having a challenging conversation with someone, whether you're in the middle of an ultra marathon, right? The last thing you want to be doing is thinking about how far you've come and how far you have to go, right? Whether you're really trying to focus, even performing, right? You know, when I was in shows and I was performing in a musical, there's so many things that can go wrong, right? But if you trust yourself and you're prepared for that moment in time, the best use of your time in that moment is to focus on the present.
Yeah.
I have a mantra I use while I'm running that if I start, if my mind drifts, even if it's a positive thought, if it's anything but what's exactly happening in that moment, I just say, take out the trash, right? You know, and that actually might be from, now that I'm saying that, maybe a Peaceful Warrior or The Way of the Peaceful Warrior, you know, which was a book and a movie. Yeah. I believe that might be from that, but it really, you know, reading that and seeing that movie really impacted me. And I just am such a believer of the present moment and focusing on it. So when you know, even the thought of my own running, it's, and you hinted at this, it's so easy. You know, as people, where a lot of times we're our worst enemy, right? Where we knock ourselves down, we talk ourselves down.
We're always comparing ourselves to our former self.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, and yes, there's aspirational goals I have with my running, but with the way my life is right now, which I'm very grateful for, and I get to do a lot of really amazing things every day, the reality is that with the time I have, right, I can't go run 20 miles. I can't go run 30 miles. But in this moment, what I do have is an opportunity to go run a couple, you know, and that's made me feel a lot better. And in a very practical body reason as well, like just keeping the running part of your routine is going to make it that much easier when the time comes, when I do have the time again, you know, and that's taken a lot of pressure off myself. And instead of me getting in my own right way to do anything, I'm doing something, you know, and even 10, 15 minutes of getting that heart rate up and breathing heavy, I'm just like, it reminds me, you know, why I'm breathing in the first place, you know, and it really gets me in a place where I'm ready to conquer the next challenge. So
yeah, I love that. You seem like somebody who is very much filled with gratitude. Yeah, with every moment that you get, is you're not taking anything for granted of the work that you've done to be where you're at now. And I was going to ask you what, you know, your 5-year goal might be, which actually, you know, I'd still kind of be curious. I mean, not taking away from present moment, but you know, you have built basically a life that seems to really be everything that you've wanted. You know, you've created happiness, not just for yourself, but happiness in so many other people, and this opportunity to really impact people in such a meaningful way. Where do you take it? Where does the next 5 years look for you?
Sure. As I've alluded to, right, I can be a really hard worker, right, where I can kind of get in the trenches and be super focused. And I'm very grateful to have that skill and that ability. I would love to get to a place where I have a balanced life, right? Where when the time comes and when it's needed, you know, I can turn that on and get after that energy system of whether that's creating change or creating a accomplishment of a goal that I'm passionate about. But at the same time, I think an opportunity for me is balancing that energy with taking some time to focus on my running, right? You know, to be the partner that Megan deserves, my fiance, to be the best friend I possibly can be, to leaning into my community in other ways that I haven't, whether that's music or in other ways I haven't even thought of yet. So when I think about my future, I would love to find a way to be more balanced in my life. And a lot of that, comes with creating a team, right?
Sure.
That I can truly trust and to take the baton and really continue to grow and develop the community and passion. Exactly, right? And I like to think that I've come a long way with that, but those things take time, and we have such a phenomenal team at Fleet Feet and with the events that we do and within our running community and all the programming we do. But I'm excited for that day where I can genuinely and truly believe that our team is dialed and doing what needs to be done, to create the energy and the environment that we're all striving for.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it seems like you're definitely moving yourself closer to that with where things are going now and the trajectory that it seems to be on. It seems like you've got great people aligned with your vision, and you're getting more and more involved with building the community, and not just the community itself, but building Fleet Feet is the place to go to get that support and get that help and ask those questions, or for us seasoned runners to go in and, shoot the shit with somebody that, to talk about running, to where you won't get that if you go into somewhere else where it's just somebody selling you a pair of shoes or something.
Exactly.
But no, it's awesome to see. I'm really, really excited to see where it goes from here. And I couldn't be happier for you.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot. Yeah. I so appreciate all of your time, and thanks for giving me an opportunity to speak to some of this stuff.
Absolutely.
It feels really good.
Well,
so I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I am going to ask you two more questions.
Sure.
One's going to be quick, but before I do, I want to give you an opportunity to touch on anything maybe I missed or I didn't give you a chance to speak to.
Sure.
It was a long, meandering conversation, but I'm sure we could keep going and going. But
sure.
I want to make sure that there's anything else you'd like to throw out.
Sure. I guess I'll add, which is something I've already touched on, but our community, our running community, is truly all in this together, right? So I think a call of action of sorts to, encourage that neighbor, to sign up for that 5K, check on that person at work who hinted at that they might like to go for a run. Invite them to go on a run with you, right? Engage in your local community group. Show up to that group run. Support the local store. I'll say that I love hearing when people go to Shoes or Bandana that they went in and supported a local store. Yeah. I am so passionate about that. And to me, that is such a win. Yeah. So I want to encourage people to continue to do that, because that's the lifeblood of what we're all working to create together. And we'll always be able to accomplish more when we work together. Yeah. So I'm real passionate about that. And I guess that's what I'd like to share and really challenge those that are listening to this, that when we work together, some really special things happen. So I want to encourage people to do that.
Yeah, I really love hearing that, because like I said earlier, that hasn't always been the case, where it was everybody would, support everybody, kind of on the slide, but it wasn't so out there and vocal that somebody could say, you know what, I really don't care where you're going as long as you're supporting local.
Yep.
And being involved.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
Yeah, I truly believe that. That's full authenticity. I think it's very important for the future of our community and being able to develop it.
Absolutely. So. Two more quick questions. One of them, this was College View Track Club.
Oh, yeah?
What's College View Track Club? And I think the tag of that was Become Great.
Man, that's a throwback. You've done some research. So I think when I look back through high school, there were some inklings, without me really embodying it at the time, that I was on this path, to create opportunities for people to move together. And we didn't have too much time where we didn't have structured training throughout high school, but there was about maybe 4 to 6 weeks in between the end of Nike Cross Nationals, which is early December, and the beginning of indoor track. Right? Because in Chicago, we really were three sport athletes. We had an indoor track at our high school, which was awesome. And we had probably at least 8 or 9 meets, before we went outside. It's just kind of a trip to think about. But there was this time period where we weren't running hard and running together. And looking back on it, I'm kind of like, man, it would have been kind of nice to take a bit of a breather, because that might have created longevity.
I don't know that you know how to do that yet.
But of course, I took it upon myself to bring some of the guys together that were, at the kind of the top of the team there and say, hey, like we need to make sure people are still meeting up and getting in workouts. And that was probably the first structured training I wrote. It was really probably just an extension of the training we did over the year. So after school, we'd all meet at my house, which was about a five-block walk from the high school. So all these kids would just come over, and be in my front yard. I'm sure my parents loved that, And, I'd get up in front of everyone, talk about the route today and what the workout was going to be. And then we'd get going. And I was real intentional to make these 1 or 2 mile loops that I knew didn't have ice or snow on them. And we go out and shovel them. And sometimes it was easy runs. Sometimes we do threshold work or run some intervals. And yeah, like I said, looking back on it, we probably should have taken more of a break, but it kept the community and the culture of the team together, where we were dialed, we were focused, and I think we maintained that habit, right? Habit's a fickle thing, it can be very powerful in both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
And that I think that consistency, just helping bridge the gap, helped set up the team for success. But our neighborhood was called the College View neighborhood. I referenced Elmhurst College. Mm-hmm. So we were that's what our little neighborhood was called. And so College View Track Club had a bit of a little ring to it. So we made some singlets, and that was kind of the first, I guess, running industry, formalized running. Yeah. So
that's awesome.
Learned a lot for sure, but it was fun.
It also speaks to maybe your desire to, be in a leadership role, in a leadership capacity.
Yeah, sure.
You're looking around for somebody to do the things, that you would be doing, and you're not seeing that, so you're creating it.
Yeah, sure.
Which will lead to my last question. You seem like you are intentionally, unintentionally, you're building legacy, in not just for you, but for the community. So I'm curious, what does legacy mean to you, and what's the legacy that you want to be remembered for?
Wow. I want people to remember that I did the right thing, especially when it was hard to do, and a right thing that helped other people and was really true and authentic to what I believe and what I believe the community deserves. I think that there's always opportunity, for people to rise up and bring people together and set an expectation and really raise the expectation of what we should expect when we're runners in our community. And I would love to have been a part of that, right? And it's a great question, and I don't think about those things much, of course, but I would feel so grateful and just so empowered if people saw me that way, as someone that kind of raised the bar, right? Instead of accepting that this is the way it is, it can be better than that. And yes, it might take some hard work, and it may not be easy, and we may not know how to do it. We have to figure it out along the way. And we might have to work together with people that we haven't in the past, or that it may not make sense or hasn't made sense to do. But I really believe that if we work together, we'll be better. And I really think there's an opportunity to raise the bar a bit. And that's been a big part of our journey and what we're focusing on, at Fleet Feet and with Megan and I. And I hope we can continue to do that. And honestly, like I could care less if people remember me as someone that was a part of that. I just would love for people to have felt a change and give them the running community that they deserve.
That's awesome. Well, I think you're definitely doing that. And I thank you for being such an active part in this, greater valley and what you're doing and the continued efforts, because you're definitely taking action, and you can tell that it's not just lip service. You truly seem excited, and you're feeling it. And, like we were messaging back and forth, it's going to take me a little bit longer. I'm with a customer, and you're making sure that everybody's getting that intentional focus that they deserve. Yeah, and it's so refreshing to hear. I love that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. I've had a great time being on, and thank you for giving me a platform to talk about some of these things that are important.
Yeah.
I really, really appreciate your time, and thank you for doing this, right? Because the concept of this podcast and your mission and your why of why you're creating this moment in time with me and with others is right in alignment in a lot of what I've touched on today.
Yeah.
It takes a team, it takes people stepping up and being intentional to create these moments and to create this content to get the word out about all the really special and cool things happening in our valley.
Yeah.
And
sometimes it starts with a conversation.
Exactly. Yeah, usually does. So thank you.
Well, I'm sure we're going to be doing this again and sitting down in the future to have more discussions, and we'll see where things are at, but continued success. I'm rooting for you, and I can't wait to see what happens going forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Jake. I appreciate
Alex,
you, man.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time.
Oh, of course. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And that wraps up another episode of the Run from the Norm podcast. How can you not feel inspired, motivated, and honestly, I don't know, I just feel lighter. I don't know. There was something magical about not only what Alex had to say, but his purpose behind the words. I have no doubt that Alex and his partner and fiancée Megan are going to continue to have a huge impact in uniting and inspiring more and more people to move their bodies and change their lives. I really feel in my heart that his message of servant leadership and being in the service of others is going to be the key to not only his success, but to the life-changing impacts of more and more people than he could have ever imagined. So thank you again, Alex, for being vulnerable, open, and truly authentic. I could not have asked for any more than what you gave me. I think you're truly a gift to this ever-expanding community of runners and walkers alike. And as always, a huge thank you to you for sharing your time and listening to this episode. And as the Christmas holiday fast approaches, take some time and stop into either of the Fleet Feet locations, Meridian or Nampa, whichever is closest and most convenient for you, and say hi to Alex and his team. They are absolutely awesome. And lastly, if you're enjoying what we're doing with this podcast, I humbly ask one favor. Please follow the Run from the Norm Facebook page for updates so you don't miss any future podcast releases. And you can also learn more about what we're doing at www.runfromthenorm.com. And with that, I wish you happy holidays, a safe and fruitful New Year's, and I encourage you to stay forever curious, keep moving forward, and get yourself outside to run from the norm.
Check that mic, make sure it sound right, boy.